can make it so that it feels like nothing we are doing is ever enough. Like we can't possibly spend enough time giving the horse everything we need to give them or want to give them. Welcome to Season 5 of the Willing Equine podcast, the podcast all about creating positive relationships between horses and people. I'm your host, Adele Shaw, a certified equine behavior consultant, horsemanship mentor, and all-around horse lover. Many of you guys probably know that I moved my horses home to be with me about a year ago. It was almost exactly a year ago today. And when I'm recording this episode, and there's been an ongoing theme, an ongoing process or learning journey for me that has been happening since moving the horses home a year ago. And I wanted to share that with you guys, and I wanted to share with you just the things that I've discovered, the things I've been thinking a lot about, and not only because it's fresh for me and I'm experiencing it now, and I have been for the past year, and as well as past times as well, but it's also something that many of my clients experience too, and that I support them through. And so I feel like it's a really good opportunity, since I've been thinking about it a lot, it's very present in my life right now, that I wanted to share that with you guys and discuss that further. And that is the general overarching feeling of feeling like you're not enough. It's not enough. Nothing that you do is enough. You never get enough time with your horses. You never can do enough training. You can never do enough physical care and support. You can never do enough when it comes to your education. You can never do enough when it comes to, the things like their hoof care or dental work, or making sure they're having their skin issues taken care of, or that we're working on enough of their behaviors. Are we doing enough cooperative training? Are we doing enough exercise? Are we doing enough no expectation time, just hanging out with them? Are we doing enough making sure that they have enough enrichment, that they have enough forage, that they have the best quality forage? Are we making sure their diet is just right? Are we feeding them the right supplements? Are we giving them the best medical care? Are we giving them the best life that we possibly can? Do they have the right kinds of companions? Do they have the right kind of environment to live in? Are they moving enough? Should we change the environment that they're living in? Should we do something to adjust how they're moving? Should we change their paddock or their pasture? Should we move and move them to a new place so that they can have more place to move? Should we move so that they have better companions? Should we move so we can be closer to our favorite vet? Should we move so that we can work with this farrier that we really want to work with? And then is the farrier that is, really good for taking care of their feet at doing, is that going to be good enough and support their mental needs too? And like, which farrier should we work with? Which vet should we work with? Which body worker should we work with? Should we be doing body work sessions with our horses every day? Can we afford to have somebody come out even once a month? Shouldn't they be getting more body work? How often should we be adjusting their saddle? Should we be adjusting it more? Are we doing enough? Or have we gotten them the best saddle for them? Are we making sure that it's the right saddle for their back? What's the new research saying? What about their gut support? Are their guts healthy? Can we know? Do we need to do scopes? Do we need to scope every day? How do we take care of their guts and make sure that we're not dealing with ulcers and other kinds of stuff? Do we need to increase their protein? Do we need to decrease their fat? I don't know. It goes on and on and on and on. There's just an endless doubt cycle. There is an endless amount of things to learn and to do. And there's always more that we should be doing. At least that's what it feels like. And that we should always be doing better, and it's never enough. And then this can lead to really just tremendous amounts of doubt that we are good enough for our horses. Like we start questioning even our self-worth or just our, whether or not we should be horse caregivers, whether or not we should be doing this, should we be doing something else? Are we good enough? Do our horses deserve better? Should they be in a different home? Should we have not made this decision or that decision? Like, are we just not the right person for them? Are we not doing enough? We start doubting ourselves, right? Even though we are spinning our wheels and we are exhausted trying to support our horses. And we love it. We do love supporting our horses. We do love being horse caregivers and equestrians. We do love horses. But especially once you know, like as you get more involved in horses and your eyes become more open and you become more educated and you start becoming aware of nutrition and a forage-based diet, and you start becoming aware of what a balanced, healthy foot looks like, and you start becoming aware of how much damage a poor fitting saddle can do to their back, and how unbalanced teeth, and not all, dentists or vets are qualified or do equal work for the horse, and some can even damage the teeth, and so it becomes hard to trust just any vet, and any dentist, and it becomes hard to trust any farrier, any trimmer, and it becomes hard to trust just anybody who produces food. We have to start questioning the professionals that we want to trust, that we want to just alleviate our mind. We want to alleviate that burden on our mind. We want to know, no, I've got that professional, they're doing that, I trust them, right? But it can become hard to do that when you run into experiences where that hasn't been the case, right? You become a little bit jaded in that capacity. But also there's just the inherent, the need for horse caregivers to be somewhat educated in all these areas enough so that you can recognize a job well done. And if you don't know anything, it becomes this ignorance is bliss. I don't know if this was how it was for you guys, but for me, definitely back in the day when I was younger and my horses were just at a boarding facility and I trusted the barn manager to, this is our vet that we use, this is our farrier that we use, this is the food that we feed, these are the supplements your horse needs, this is the saddle you should ride in, my trainer picked out my saddle for me, just these things, right? I was able to trust these professionals kind of blindly. Actually, it was blindly. And I was young and I didn't know any better, and I didn't have the internet to really educate me on these things. But I just trusted blindly, and that was really convenient, and it felt really good, and it allowed me a lot of freedom to just enjoy being around horses and just to have a good time. And as I've gotten older and more aware and more educated, and my eyes have been open and my education has continued, and I've become more just engrossed in all of the many facets of horse caring and the complexities of it and the unlimited amount of options that are out there and the nuances, especially, we have the rules, right? But then we have the individual horse and the nuances that go to support that individual horse. And then when you have more than one horse, it just magnifies, it just keeps growing. I have 8 that are here under my care. Only one of them's not mine, but the rest are. So I have 7 of my own personal horses. And so it's just tremendously magnified all of those fears and those doubts and the energy that goes into learning and changing and improving and doing and trying to do my best to support my horses. And now, yes, I am a professional. I am a professional in this in the equestrian industry as a whole. I am a behavior professional. As a behavior consultant, it is extra important that I have a strong awareness and solid education in many areas that are involved in horse caregiving, whether it's dentistry or hoof care or medical practices or saddle fit, things like that can all go to support the behavior consulting that I do. But my strongest education is in behavior and in training. So that is my primary focus, but it is important that not only as a caregiver myself, but as a professional, my area of the industry, it is important that I know all these other things too. But I do encourage my own clients to also become educated in these areas, and they do trust me to help narrow down that information and to support them for their individual horse. So I can take this big, overwhelming amount of information and funnel it down into the stuff that is more valuable for them right now, what is critical for them right now, what is really important for them right now, and I can guide them on that path. And that does help my clients tremendously, but it's still, they only have so many hours per day to dedicate to this, to dedicate to learning and learning to do this stuff themselves, or learning enough to be able to recognize a job well done, learning even enough to be able to check me too, which I encourage them to do, double check everything I'm telling you. You don't have to just blindly trust me. And considering if they have full-time jobs, or maybe they have kids, or a spouse, and they just have life, right? Or if they have any health stuff going on. I mean, life is just time-consuming. It takes all of life to sustain life, and And so then we can so easily, whether you're professional or you have horses as family members, as your pets, or partners, however you view them, it is a big chunk of time and energy that goes into supporting them, and it can feel so overwhelming and draining, especially if you have a horse with really high needs, whether it's physical needs or behavioral needs, meaning that maybe it's more related to their behavior. Require a lot of specialized management or really focused training. So maybe they need a lot of training sessions to work on some cooperative care or whatever it is to prepare them for the farrier. Maybe they struggle with, aggression. Maybe they struggle with high fear and anxiety. Those are the more on that behavioral category. But then we also have horses with really high physical needs, like horses that are struggling with conditions like PSSM or MIM or PPID or many, many, many other conditions. Horses that struggle with EMS, metabolic stuff, where we have to really keep a close eye on their feet, and maybe they've been foundering, and so they require a lot of upkeep. Maybe they're just aging and they're arthritic and they struggle maintaining their weight. These high needs can drain our energy and our time even faster and can make it so that it feels like nothing we are doing is ever enough. Like we can't possibly spend enough time giving the horse everything we need to give them or want to give them. And some of this, and that's really key right there, right? Need versus what does the horse actually need? And then our perception of what they need to thrive. And some of this, that doubt and that fear, even if you don't have a high needs horse, even if you just have your average Joe kind of horse, a horse with average amount of needs, right? An average amount of training needs. Things like imposter syndrome or a version of imposter syndrome, and also the kind of the dark side of that perfectionism, right, can feed into this. So if you struggle with doubting whether you're good enough in general and whether or not you are capable of doing this, that is kind of more of that like imposter syndrome, or just struggling with your own perception of your own abilities and your skills and your strength, your inner personal strength. You're struggling with that, and that can really show up if you just generally struggle with that. That can really show up in how you feel about how you're taking care of your horses. Other things that can show up to make this harder is perfectionism. So if you're a recovering perfectionist like I am, where if it's not perfect, you just won't do it, right? You have to do it, and you have to do it perfectly, or you just won't do it at all. And also, it's never good enough until it's perfect. I've talked a lot about perfectionism on this podcast, and I did a whole episode on that, so I'm not going to go into this too deeply, but I do want to remind you guys that perfectionism is a moving goalpost. There is no such thing as perfect, ever. There is no such thing as supporting your horses perfectly. There is no such thing as a perfect lifestyle for the horse, for your horse, or any horse. There is no such thing as a perfect life. There is no such thing as a perfect caregiver. There is no such thing as perfect caregiving. There is no such thing as the perfect horse. Perfect is a construct, and it's very, very subjective, and it's a moving goalpost. But if you're chasing this idea of perfectionism, you're going to make this extra hard for yourself. And that can contribute to feeling not good enough to be your horse's caregiver. The other thing that can really contribute to not being your horse's ideal caregiver and feeling like you're not good enough is comparing yourself to others' highlight reels. And this is pretty common when it comes to social media. I think social media has contributed significantly to this problem. And in that people show up on social media, even if they do share more of the day-to-day stuff, especially is more common nowadays to do. And everybody wants to see the more real, right? The more authentic, the more behind the scenes. Even if they're doing that to the best of their abilities, it's still not the whole picture. It's still not the whole thing. And you're still seeing their version of reality. You're still seeing a somewhat highlight reel of the mess, of the chaos. very rarely are we seeing people get on social media. I don't know that I've ever seen this, or maybe I have once before. That's what I'm saying, very rarely. So I'm not going to say never, but like, it's just not really happening. Where even myself, I don't get on social media when I'm depressed, when I'm dealing with depression, or when I'm feeling just terrible, when I'm feeling like I'm not enough, all this stuff. That's usually when I'm I don't have the energy to be creative. I don't have the energy to show up on social media. I don't have the energy to answer people's comments and to make content and even to show up for my horses. I don't really have the energy to do any, all of that is drained away, right? So if I were to talk about it like I am now, and this is just full transparency, this is how it is. When I do come on social media, and on my podcast or my blog or YouTube or my academy or anything, and I talk about these things, I've actually started coming back out of it, right? I'm coming back out of it enough to have a little bit of enough of creativity and enough motivation to talk about it. And I am trying, and I do my best to be authentic and to share these things with you guys, because I want you to know that people such as myself also struggle with this, also struggle with not feeling like I'm enough, also struggle with feeling like I'm not giving my horses the life that they deserve, also struggle with doubts and fears that I'm not providing them with the best hoof care, with the best, when it comes to how often they're getting their saddles fit and how their nutrition is and how their fitness program is and what they are, I don't know, just all the enrichment. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things that I want to do that I don't actually get an opportunity to do, and then I beat myself up about it when I don't do those things. I share with you guys, for example, on social media not too long ago, I did a whole reel about doing self-selection herbs, and that's an enrichment activity I do with my horses, and I want to be able to do that 2 to 3 times a week. I have not been able to do that 2 to 3 times a week. Instead, that time has been spent filling up hay nets, cleaning their water troughs, making sure their feet are balanced and healthy, because we've been dealing with some hoof stuff and some laminitic stuff too. Dealing with bringing on board a new nutrition consultant, because I'm struggling with some laminitic stuff, and also work and my kids are gearing up for starting their next school year, and we're preparing for that school year, and we're getting ready for classes and all that kind of stuff. I haven't been able to do the self-selection herbs, and so that is just one of probably a dozen or 2 dozen things, maybe more, things that I want to do more of, but I have to pick and choose. Like, there's only so many hours of the day. But if I sit there and think about it, very quickly I can start spiraling in this, I'm not good enough. Maybe I shouldn't have brought my horses home. Maybe I shouldn't have, this many horses, or maybe I shouldn't have horses at all. What am I even doing? Do I even deserve to have horses? Like, you could start this whole spiral, this whole negative self-talk, this really, it's just kind of dark thought process, right? And so going back to the highlight reel, so what you guys see, even though I talk about stuff like this, even though I try and be really authentic, even though I will show mistakes, even though other creators that you're seeing are showing these things, or just, your friends on social media are showing these things, it's still only a small piece of it. It's still only sections of it. It is still a version of a highlight reel. It is a highlight reel of the messy stuff. When we're really into watching all this stuff, when we're constantly watching social media, and even if you're not like addicted to it, like many of us, myself included, are at times, even when this is happening, even if you're just kind of checking it and you see some horse stuff pop up and then we move along, right? That highlight reel is still playing in your head, right? You saw a video of somebody jumping their beautiful, horse, and then it makes you like, oh, I wish I could jump today, but man, I gotta do this, right? We are comparing ourselves constantly. We're in this comparison cycle, and it creates this tendency to start judging ourselves based off of clips of other people's highlight reels. You probably don't even know whether or not that person did, rode that day. See, this is the thing. We're seeing that highlight reel. We're seeing that reel, quite literally, of somebody jumping their horse. What you don't know, or maybe potentially you don't know is that actually that person is sick in bed today and hasn't been able to go ride her horse in a week. And that's actually a video from 2 months ago when there was a beautiful day outside, but really it's been really rough and her horse has been bucking her off after the fences and they're not sure what's going on. And also she's struggling with making sure that the saddle fits and working with a nutritionist, all of this stuff when we're only seeing this pretty sunny, beautiful jumping video. And I don't have any problem with people doing that. I do that too. I love sharing with you guys all of the fun, enjoyable stuff. I love sharing my highlights with you guys. And I think that's a really beautiful part of social media. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. The potential downside, the potential dark side to that is what happens to us when we start comparing and taking those videos and those photos and pretending like, or tricking ourselves into believing that's what that person's life looks like all the time, and that we are doing anything any different, and that we are lesser than because it doesn't look like that all the time. That's what a highlight reel comparison can do to us, and really can cause, it can perpetuate that I'm not good enough feeling. So what's the solution here? Where do we go with this? Is there a time and a place where we could say that actually this horse does need a different situation? Is there ever a time and a place where our greatest fear that we're not good enough is reality? It's actually a thing and it's true. The answer to this is yes, but not in that I want you to start thinking that the person is like that you're not good enough, like you as a whole person are not good enough, is not a healthy thought. It's not something that we should be telling ourselves, and that's not reality either. It's not that you're not good enough. It's possible that there is a time and a place, there's a situation that may come about where it's not meant to be for that particular horse and you at that time. That it is not the right setup for you and that horse at that time, that you do have to find a different situation to help that horse thrive. And maybe that means that you will be able to thrive with a different horse, or maybe it's just not the right time to have a horse. Maybe something's happened in your life and we need to find a new situation for that horse, but that doesn't make you not good enough. It just means that circumstances have changed and we need to be objective and we need to make decisions to support our horses so that they can live a good life, so that they can thrive, so that they can do well, and so that we can do well, so that we can thrive. And these situations do happen. It is possible that, and they come across and they do happen. I've had to work with clients. I've worked with clients a few times where this has been the outcome, where we have decided, and I've supported them in their decision, that it wasn't that they weren't good enough. It's not that something was wrong with them. It just wasn't the right timing, or something needed to change to be able to support them in their situation. Maybe something happened for them medically, something happened for them physically, in that maybe their living situation changed, maybe their job situation changed, maybe their mental health state changed. These things do happen. They are reality. Life is messy and it changes. It changes often and by surprise, and nobody's expecting it usually. And things do happen also for our horses, and life is messy for horses too. And sometimes it just works out that it is better for a horse to find a different situation, or for us to find a different situation for our horses. But again, it's not that you weren't good enough, and it's not that your horse wasn't good enough. It's just that it didn't work out, and it shouldn't reflect how you perceive your own value and who you are and your abilities. The problem, though, is that in many cases, I think culturally, we have become conditioned to look at these types of situations through an incorrect lens. We view how we are caring for our horses and how we are supporting our horses through a culturally conditioned lens of using the horses. And even if you want to use words like partner, or that they need a job, they love their job, there's lots of ways that we phrase it in such that we can support our decisions and make ourselves feel better. But also this is part of that cultural conditioning, right? We have grown up generation after generation after generation, being taught that horses have a job, that they need a job to thrive, that is where their worth is found, in whether they can perform, whether it's in the competition ring or back in the day pulling a cart, or I don't know, whatever it is called when they help with the fields. They needed a job. They had to do something. And if they weren't doing a job, then they were being bred, right? So a mare who was retired from performance could have foals. That was her purpose. That was her job. And their value was solely found in that they had to perform to some capacity to serve us, in a sense. And that was pretty clear and obvious back when horses were our cars, right? When they drove us around everywhere and they pulled our carts and they pulled our trains and, whatever I'm thinking back to like the movie Spirit. And when they are a means of transportation, when they delivered the mail, when they carried soldiers into war, horses always served us in a very clear and obvious way. Now it's a little bit less clear and obvious nowadays, because now their job, the way they serve us, is by winning medals and prizes, by going to competitions, by producing top winning offspring, by toting around different clients for like equine facilitated things like therapy or learning facilities. There's a lot of ways that horses work for us and still serve us and do things for us. And so our lens through which we look at a horse's worth, and also whether or not they are being fulfilled, is whether or not they are performing a job of some kind to serve us. And we have been conditioned to have this perception that if they are not doing one of those things, if we are not riding them, if they are not going to shows, if they're not having foals, if they are not at a learning facility or a equine facilitated type facility, a therapy facility, if they are not doing kids riding lessons or horsemanship lessons or doing clinic demos or something, that they are not fulfilling their potential and therefore not happy. And this is 100% pure fiction, 100% pure fiction that we have made up and we have projected onto the horse. A lot of times, because us as humans, we feel unfulfilled if we don't know that our purpose, if we don't feel like we have some sort of goal or purpose in life, that we don't have a place in life, that there is not something that we are doing or offering to the world around us that is of value. And so we are projecting this onto our horses. And so then when we get to a situation in our lives where we need to take a back seat and not ride so much, or we can't go out and go do all these competitions because we're short on money, or our horses are just hanging out in the pasture and they're, being pasture puffs or whatever, pasture ornaments, that they are not being fulfilled, that they are not thriving. We have convinced ourselves that they are wasting away and that they are unhappy. And this is, again, pure fiction. And it supports our belief system, the story that we tell ourselves that we are not good enough because we cannot do those things now, because we are not offering that to the horse. We are not providing that to the horse, which the horse never asked for to begin with. And this is like the big zoomed out, like this is a bigger, larger issue that I see over the whole of the equestrian industry, and a whole perception about horses that is an ongoing struggle that we are unpacking. This generation, a lot of very aware and educated equestrians that are choosing a different path for ourselves and our horses, that are choosing to care for horses in a different way, that are choosing to not look at them as a being that's going to serve us and provide something for us. When we have chosen to do things differently, we're still unpacking that though. We are still struggling with that, especially if we have the people around us telling us that constantly, right? Just dropping that back in. Even very subtle, unintentional things. I had somebody not too long ago that I care about very deeply, and they are a very educated, aware horse person that has a little bit different beliefs in certain areas of horses than I do, and different training methodologies than I do, but we still talk so much and we highly respect each other. And that person made a comment, it was a while ago, but made a comment along the lines of, and it's not a direct quote because I can't remember exactly, but it was along the lines of, well, I still think of it as like I'm doing all this to support my horse. The least I can do is give me something back, or something like that. That was what was implied, is that there was something that could be given back. And comments like that, or comments along the lines of that, well, I've spent a lot of time and effort and energy into supporting this horse and doing all these things. I don't want to waste all of that by not doing stuff like riding. And I don't want to waste that time and energy and all the money and effort I've put into this, to not get that stuff back. And these are not direct quotes by any means, but it's just similar comments to stuff like that. But then you'll hear more blatant comments like, well, my horses are just bored sitting out in the pasture, and they're just going to waste out there, so they need to be used. Or like they're a car sitting in the garage going to waste, resting. Or you'll hear comments like, just, the ongoing, we see it all the time. Well, my horse loves their job. I think horses really like to work, and they don't do well if they don't have a job. Or if a horse is misbehaving, they'll say something like, well, you just need to give him a job, put him to work, and he'll fix his attitude right away. And this is just constant in our culture, constant everywhere. It's everywhere. It's even in advertisements and on advertisements for companies that do things like supplements. It's just ingrained in everything and every word we say, everything we do in our entire equestrian community. And this can really just deepen that idea that if we are not using our horse, and it's just hard to fight against that we are not good enough, that something's wrong with us, and that we're not providing our horses their needs, that we're not giving them, they're not going to be thriving, therefore something's wrong with us, right? So it can create this conflict for us as well, which can be a difficult struggle. And then, we're already struggling with that ourselves. We're unpacking this stuff. We're deciding what it is that we want and what we believe in. And then we have this constant raining down of subtle and not so subtle comments and beliefs from everybody else. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, please do email me at info@thewillingequine.com. If you'd like more information on my courses, coaching, consulting, or even access to free resources, please do check out my website, thewillingequine.com. If you like this podcast or this episode, please do leave feedback on the platform that you listen to it on.